Hello, my name is Dr. William McKibben, and the purpose of this video is to show you how you can create APA formatted tables and figures using Microsoft Office 365. Now, before you begin creating APA formatted tables and figures, the first thing you really should do is consult with the APA publication manual. And you see the cover of the manual here. This is the 6th edition. And what you want to do is visit Chapter 5, Displaying Results. And Chapter 5 is dedicated to covering the protocols that are required to format tables and figures in detail. The chapter also provides many examples of tables and figures that you can use to learn how to create or to learn what the protocols are that are used in creating tables and figures in APA. So as we look at Chapter 5, the first half of the chapter is dedicated to covering how to format tables. Tables, keep in mind, are columns of numbers and text, columns and rows that are used in documents. Tabular reporting, we'll call that, that we use commonly in research and so forth. It provides great detail on how that is done. It provides examples on how these tables are created. It discusses how the captions are created for tables and so forth. That's the first half of APA, of the Chapter 5. In the second half of Chapter 5, you'll find specific guidance on how to create figures. Now, figures are different than tables. Figures are illustrations. They include pictures, influence diagrams, drawings, photographs, and so forth that you use in your research studies and your publications. And so you'll see, again, many examples of how tables can be used and created using APA. Also in APA, Chapter 5, you will find on page 150 a Table 5.19 table checklist. And this provides some specific guidance that you can use to check, questions that you can use to check your work after you complete a table. And this you should refer to and check on each table before you actually decide that the table is ready for submission for publication. Also at the end of the chapter, there's another table that describes how to create figures and the questions that you should use to check whether the figure is properly formatted. Again, you would use these questions in order to assess whether each of your figures is in fact ready for submission to publication. So the first thing again that you would want to do as you begin preparing tables and figures using APAs, you'll want to spend some time, some quality time, looking at Chapter 5, studying the many examples for tables and figures, and being ready to refer back to those as you check your own work. You'll want to have this on your desk as you prepare tables and figures. Okay, next I'd like to go ahead and create some tables and figures using some actual data. We'll show you what the process looks like. And to do that, I'm going to open an Excel spreadsheet. So where does data originate for creating tables and figures? Well, it can originate in many different places. It probably is going to originate in analyses that you do in tools such as SPSS, JMP. It could be a qualitative analytics tool that does content analysis, such as NVivo. And essentially all analytics software that performs statistical analysis or content analysis has the capability of exporting the tables and figures that are created in that software tool into Microsoft Excel. So wherever the data originates, you have an opportunity, or no doubt, to export the results of your analysis from the software that you prefer into Microsoft Excel. Likewise, you could actually do the analysis in Excel, and there are analytical tools built into Excel. If that's what you're using, you'll already have your analyses already in Excel. So we'll be starting with a Microsoft Excel document with the assumption that we have some data that we might have obtained from some other source. And here I'm going to actually run some analytics, and then our purpose here is not to analyze data. Our purpose here is to create tables and figures that we can then format for inclusion in a Microsoft Word document. Okay, so here's some data that I've come up with just to practice this. It includes a column for gender, age, height, and weight data. And so let's go ahead and run a regression. Let's regress age against height and weight. To do that, I'm going to use a tool that I'm familiar with called ExcelStat, and I'll go ahead and run a linear regression. And that's coming up now. Okay, so we've already loaded the columns into this. I'll go ahead and run the analysis. Here we go. And that analysis then appears as a new tab at the bottom where it says linear regression in the Excel workbook that I'm working on. Now again, we're not analyzing the data here. That's the subject of another video. But what we are doing here is we're going to look at these tables and figures that were produced by the software and ask how do we get that into an APA format that we can then place in our Word document in a way that is ready to go. So let's go ahead and then look at our first table here. Here we see a table of summary statistics or descriptive statistics. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to create another tab here in order to put the data in, or put that table in so that we can work with it. So I've pasted the table into this tab. So here we go. So first off, let me say that this table, and essentially any table that you get out of almost any piece of software, is not ready to be cut and paste into your Word document as is. This is not APA formatted, it never is, and so there's some work you have to do on the table, or if it's a figure, you would have to do some work on that to make sure that it's properly formatted and ready to be pasted into Microsoft Word. So that's what we're doing today. So here we see a typical kind of table that would come out of software. And we're going to put this in APA format. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate some extra space here that I see. I'll just do a delete, and so now we have the data lined up. And I also see that there is a column here where the text is in green. I'm going to go ahead and make a change on that and set it up so that it's black. So that's a requirement for APA. We don't use colors in tables. What we do is we want to make sure all the text is in fact black. We also want to make sure that the text that we're using is in Times New Roman format. So I'm going to go ahead and peruse down to Times New Roman and select that so that it's in the right format. And I'll also select Times New Roman 12 pica size, which is the size that's expected in APA. And for APA formatted tables, you should have that in the font that is required for the submission, and the font that's required by APA is Times New Roman. Okay, so we have our text created here in the right font and the right size. What's the next step? Well, I'm going to just go ahead and eliminate this grid lines in the background. We don't need these grid lines because if you copy this table as it is, it will lift the grid lines into the table. And keep in mind that APA formatted tables does not permit vertical lineage, nor does it permit box lineage, such as would be here. So to do that, we're going to go to the Page Layout tab at the top, and you'll see under Sheet Options, and you'll see grid lines. Here I'm going to deselect the view grid lines, and notice now the grid lines have been eliminated. And this will enable us to copy this table properly without lifting the grid lines into the table. Okay, next step. Let's go ahead and set up the columns so that there's enough width in them so that we can actually see the entirety of the data that's included in each cell. And I'm going to go ahead and set this up to do text wrapping on this particular row 3. And what that means is now that the data is wrapping so that we don't need to make the column as wide. So by wrapping text, that allows us to have narrower columns. And then what we'll need to do is look at this and keep in mind as we copy and paste tables into Microsoft Word, there is a width issue. If you make your table so wide that it doesn't fit into Microsoft Word, the boundaries left and right 1-inch margins, then it will cause the table to be pasted into the Word document in a smaller size. And so you have to make some adjustments to prepare for that. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and make these these columns narrower. And what you want to do is make them as narrow as you can, but not so narrow that the words begin to break up. So here we still have some words breaking up. Can we just go ahead and make this a little wider? Okay, here we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and make this, I'm actually going to select each column and see how narrow I can make those. This one needs to be wider because the word observations is broken up. And here we can make these a little narrower, I think. Let's see what we can do. Okay, good. So we'd have that. So we're ready to go with the width of the of each of the columns, and that's looking pretty good the way it is. Now keep in mind also you may have to make other adjustments. For example, let's say this particular row were, for whatever reason, colored green in the export that you have from whatever software you're using. Okay, well this shading would have to be eliminated, and so what I'll do here is I'm going to go ahead and choose no fill. Okay, we now have that, and I'll make sure that the text is black again. So you may have to do some color adjustment, some adjustments to make sure that you have no grayscale, grayed columns or colored columns in your tables, which is a requirement. Also, I'd like to go ahead and center our labeling and all the data. Actually, want to center all of the data in their cells vertically, and so I'll choose this to do that. Okay, we're good. Here we go. And next step would be to look at this. Now notice we have a horizontal line here, and that horizontal line is a bold-faced line. And what APA requires is that all the lines be non-bold-faced. So we'll have to make a change to make that correct. And to do that, I'm going to choose the bottom border that is not thick, the non-thick bottom border. There is an option for a thick bottom border. I'll choose the non-thick border. And I'm going to do that at the bottom of the table as well. Okay. So now we have the proper horizontal lineage in the document. I'm going to do one last thing, and that is I'm going to make several of these columns a little wider. So let me do that here, and that will, again, that will make it more compliant with the examples we see in APA. Okay, so we have our table set up, and I think that's looking pretty good. There's one last thing we have to do, and this is we're going to lift this title, or this for the table, into our Word document. And to do that, I'm going to eliminate unnecessary punctuation, and I'm going to italicize that, because in the APA guide it says that the title of the table at the top should be italicized. Now we'll still have to add the words table number when we put this into Word, but we now have an italicized title for the table. Okay, so the next step then will be to select this table and copy it. And now we're going to go to a blank Word document to show how we can actually put that in to work for us as an insert into our publication paper. And so here I'm going to go ahead and do a paste. Now it's not a Control-V paste, because if you do a Control-V, it will paste an Excel object into Excel. And that's not what you want. What you want to do is choose Paste Special, and then choose Picture Enhanced Metafile. Picture Enhanced Metafile. This will allow a figure or a picture of the table to be created that is created using vector graphics, meaning that it is laser printer ready. It's ready for crisp viewing from the readers, and it doesn't blur as you resize the object itself once it goes into Word. So I've chosen Picture Enhanced Metafile, and you should choose the equivalent formatting that is in Microsoft if you use it on a Macintosh computer, whatever that is. So here now we have the table inserted. Good. And I'm now going to go to before the table. I'm going to insert actually I need to make sure we're using Times New Roman, which would be normal when we're creating a document. So I'm now choosing Times New Roman and 12 pocket font. And now I'm going to put table 1. Okay. So it says table 1, non-italicized. And that agrees with the examples that we find in APA Chapter 5. The second line, which is double spaced down, should be italicized. Here the title of the table is Summary Statistics. And the rest of the document is ready to go, although I do see that this particular row here is not in Times New Roman. So I'm going to have to make a change here. I'm going to go ahead. This can happen. Let's go ahead and delete that. We'll go back to our Word document. I'll need to go here and make sure I'm using Times New Roman again, which for some reason was not. I changed it, I guess. This is the kind of iterative work you have to go through to get it right, to get it APA formatted. You can't just leave these small mistakes there because it will cause problems. Here I've now changed that to Times New Roman 12, and I'm going to highlight the table again. Copy. We go to Word, and now I'm going to paste special. I'm going to choose enhanced picture, enhanced meta file, and we're ready to go. So again, we have a table. You can put text before it or after it. It's table 1, summary statistics. It's printed. It's in Times New Roman format. It has the proper horizontal lineage, and it's ready to go. This is an APA formatted table. That's the exercise you go through in general for every table that you're going to lift out of Excel into a Microsoft Word document. Now, there are many other formats for tables, but they all follow the same general conventions, and that is they have horizontal lines only. There are no vertical lines. There's no boxing permitted, and there is generally it's like essentially a double-spaced set of numbers and text that goes into the table. So with that now, let's go ahead and practice creating a figure. This is a table. Columns of numbers and figures. Let's create a figure. And a figure is an illustration, an influence diagram, or some sort of a chart that's created to support your arguments in your paper. And so I'm going to go back to Excel, and in our analysis, the regression analysis, in fact, a figure was created. It's a age standardized coefficients table. Again, we're not analyzing data here. I'm just going to select that. And then what I'm going to do is copy it, and I'm going to go back to Microsoft Word, and I'm going to assume we want to paste it here, and I'll do a paste again, paste special, picture enhanced meta file, and there it goes. Now, one of the requirements for APA is that your figures should be, if possible, non-colorized. I'm not saying you can't use colored figures in a APA formatted document, but the way APA reads is whenever possible, it should be black and white or grayscale. Well, the good news is changing this to grayscale is relatively very simple. You just right click. I just did a right click on my mouse, and I'm going to choose Format Picture. And then this will bring up a format picture, and there is at the top 4 icons. I'm going to choose this picture icon to the right here, and then it will say Picture Color. Okay, so we'll choose that, and I'm going to then drop down to where there's this drop-down menu. Here it says Recolor, and I'm going to choose Grayscale. Okay, this is the grayscale option. You could choose other colors if you wanted to, but what we're looking for is grayscale, and now we have a grayscale figure that's ready to go. One last step is we now have to create the caption for our figure. And one of the differences between tables and figures, according to APA, is that the caption goes above a table, but captions go below figures. So what we'll do is we'll drop below the figure, and here I'm going to write figure 1. Okay, figures are different. Make sure that's APA formatted. Times New Roman. Okay, I'm going to 12 pica. There we go. And one of the things that's also required is a period after the figure 1, figure 2, figure 3. Okay, and then we'll put the title of the figure, and that is, in this case, I'll just use what's on the figure already. And one last thing we have to do is to make our italicization of the caption proper. And this is just the opposite of a table. On a table, table 1 was not italicized, but the title of the table was italicized, two spaces, double space down below where it says table 1. Here we type table 1 period, then we have the title, but in the case of a figure, the words figure 1, figure 2 is are italicized, and the title of the figure is not italicized. So that's just the opposite of the convention we used on tables. Furthermore, we do not put the title of the figure to double space down below it, but rather it continues on the same line, and you can continue the title to multiple lines if required. So this illustrates what the captioning should be for a figure. So now we have a properly formatted figure that's been inserted into Microsoft Word, and it's ready to go. We also have a properly formatted table that's inserted into Microsoft Word, and that's ready to go. So I hope this is helpful. It's intended to be an exercise where I can show you how to create properly formatted figures and tables that are APA format ready to go into your document. And if you'll follow this process, I think you'll have less trouble than if you try to do it other ways. Thank you very much, and see you soon.